We are all getting older. Yes, sadly, it's true. Simon Richardson is nearly 40, Dan Lloyd is well on his way to turning 50, and I myself, well, I know it's only a subtle difference, but it's true, I am a lot balder than I used to be. But is it just that we're all getting older? Is there something else going on that's making us feel even older than we already are? Are professional cyclists getting younger too? In the last few years, we've had the youngest winner of the Tour de France since 1904, the youngest rider ever to win the Tour de France twice, the youngest rider to finish on the podium of a Grand Tour since 1904, the youngest Grand Tour stage winner since 1981, the youngest rider ever to win 2 mountain stages in a Grand Tour, the youngest rider ever to win 2 Monument Classics in the same year, the youngest World Road Race champion since 1993, the youngest rider to have won the Worlds and a Grand Tour, the youngest ever winner on Alpe d'Huez, the youngest Grand Tour podium since 1931. I could go on and on and on. Young riders are winning races and achieving great feats, the likes of which we haven't seen for decades and in some cases ever. So what is different? What's changed? Has anything changed? Is this an actual trend, or is it just a remarkable set of achievements by a very small number of freak outliers? Let's take our number crunching shovels and start digging. Let's consider the men's peloton, because it's the men's peloton where we're really starting to see the shift towards youth. In the same way that football, or soccer, only began in 1992, let's go back to when cycling began, in 2005. This is when the Pro Tour began, the precursor to the World Tour, when the top tier of races we know today were first defined as a top tier, and the teams that competed in those races became much more stable and consistent. So, has the peloton in general been getting younger? Here's a shiny graph showing the average age of the entire Pro Tour / World Tour every year from 2005 right up to the forthcoming year, 2023. Not a whole lot of variance there, eh? The oldest the entire peloton has been was 27.7 as recently as 2019, and the youngest it's been during that period was back in 2008 and 2009 when it was slightly below 27. Although the age has been dipping slightly in the past couple of years, it's really quite stable around an overall average of 27.4, and that average, around 27, in my head is about the age where I think a cyclist should probably be at their peak. In case you were wondering, the oldest ever team in the World Tour was Israel Premier Tech this year. They're the only team throughout that entire period to have an average age of over 30, blowing the budget on golden oldies like Chris Froome, Mike Woods, Jakob Fuglsang and Sepp van Mark. Turns out, probably wasn't the best tactic, as they only went and got themselves relegated from the World Tour. Anyways, that's probably a topic for another video. But despite the creaking limbs at Israel Premier Tech, the average age of teams hasn't really changed since 2005. That's something we can confidently now state as fact. The peloton as a whole is not getting older. But big deal, that's just an average of all the riders that there are. We don't need to focus on just the riders that are there, we need to focus on the riders that are winning. So let's do that then. Here's another shiny graph showing the average of all of the winners of all the Pro Tour / World Tour races since 2005. Still not much going on, is there? Quite subtle changes over the years. A drop from 27-ish to 26-ish doesn't really feel like enough to make us all feel as old as we've been feeling. Well then let's get more specific. The Monument Classics, the World Road Race, these are the big ones, the ones that stick in the memory. Fabian Cancellara out-kicking Tom Bonen on the Moor van Gerardsbergen, Mark Cavendish chasing down Heinrich Hausser on the Via Roma and beating him by a centimetre, Remco Evenepoel finally proving after all these years that it is still possible to attack on La Redoute and win Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Peter Sagan winning 3 World Road Races in a row, each in very different circumstances. These are the races that are really retrievable from our brain memories when we think of who won what. So what does that graph look like? Not another graph, I hear you say. Come on, bear with me here. It's about to actually get interesting. Massive drop! Look at that! We're not going crazy. The winners of the big races are getting younger. You used to have to be over 30 to win one of cycling's biggest one-day races. Now, mid-20s is perfectly peachy. And so what about the Grand Tours, the biggest races of them all? Yes, here's another graph, the last one I promise. The graph for that is even more pronounced. Look at the cliff the average age has been falling off since 2018. But that's not exactly a surprise, is it? With Egan Bernal, Tadej Pogačar and Remco Evenepoel winning Grand Tours, of course the graph is going down. But hang on, therein lies the bottom of this statistical pit we've been digging. Let's recap. Are teams getting younger in general? No. Are winners of World Tour races getting younger in general? No. Are winners of monuments, rainbow jerseys and grand tours getting younger? Yes. Emphatically yes. So doesn't that give us our answer? Isn't it telling us that this is a few freak outliers? Yes, I think that's exactly what the data is telling us. The 3 Grand Tour winners in 2022 were Jai Hindley, Jonas Vingegaard and Remco Evenepoel, an average age of 24.8, the youngest set of 3 Grand Tour winners since 1936, and yet the average age of a Grand Tour top 10 finisher this year was nearly 28.6, so the top riders in Grand Tours in general are still the age you would traditionally expect them to be, but the top cream of the crop are just considerably younger. This is skewing our brains into thinking all the races are being won by whippersnappers. Well, it's certainly skewing my brain into thinking that, but I don't think it's quite as simple as what those graphs depict. The graphs don't explain why. Why are these young guys rising to the top now and winning the biggest races? One of the obvious answers to this question is data. Nowadays, teams don't just know riders are good before they get signed. They know exactly how good they are. Some riders coming up through the ranks now might have 10 years of power data to pour over, proving that they physically have what it takes to win big races and win them immediately. I think this is the key shift in professional cycling, a shift that we're only just beginning to feel with the likes of Pogačar and Evenepoel. Having power data is new, but it's not that new. It's been a thing for more than 20 years. Okay, it's far more prevalent now and becoming prevalenter. Even I know my functional threshold power and my VO2 max, but even 10 years ago, teams and director sportifs would have had lots of power data with which to make decisions. But what has also changed is the apprenticeship that young riders were always expected to serve. It's gone. It's disappeared. It is absolutely not expected anymore. Teams, director sportifs, and perhaps most importantly, teammates have become and are becoming more and more willing and accepting to work for teenagers, guys 15 or 20 years younger than them. And that kind of mindset takes time to shift. But it's happened. Think back to Greg LeMond, one of the most precocious talents ever to enter the world of professional cycling, but he was very much made to wait. He's not ready, he needs time to earn his position as leader, etc, etc. He didn't even ride a Grand Tour during his first 2 years as pro and didn't get to lead a team at the Tour de France, or co-lead, depending on how much you listen to Bernardino, until he was 25. But now we have a teenage Juan Ayuso finishing on the podium of the Vuelta. To be given leadership of a big team for a Grand Tour is a big deal. The preparation, the money, the personnel, the effort that goes into each and every one of them. To hand over the fortunes of an entire team to a neo-pro was, in the past, folly. But the mantra of, he's not ready, he needs time, is what's changed. That is gone now. The trust in youth is immediate. The trust in the power data is immediate. The walls of doubt of whether a rider is good enough at a young age have crumbled. Now, if they're good enough, they're old enough. And I think what will be interesting to see in the coming years is if this will be reflected on the other end of professional cycling. Will the trust in youth mean that the average rider will retire younger? Will this shift mean that we will eventually see a trend downwards? In the first graph we looked at, will the average age of the peloton start to go down as the trust in youth goes up? So what do you all think? Have I missed anything? Have I employed that old classic trick of the biased scientist and just found the data I needed to prove my own hypothesis? Is the biggest change in professional cycling in the past couple of years the trust in youth? Or is it something else? Let us know in the comments down below.